In this video, we'll begin by adding some basic structure to our application that will resemble that of Evented Mind. And then we'll start migrating over our legacy to-dos application, and in doing that, we'll look more closely at routes, layouts, controllers, and scaffolding. Let's get rid of the 3 boilerplate files that we've been using so far. Next, I'm going to use the command line tool called EM, and I'll use the init command to initialize our project structure. The init command creates a bunch of folders and files and even a little bit of code for us automatically. It's mostly boilerplate, or things that you would create over and over again yourself. Now, of course, you can feel free to use another scaffolding tool, or you can even build up these folders and files yourself. But I'll be using the M tool because it makes my life a lot easier. To begin migrating our legacy to-dos application to the new structure, I've opened up the old HTML file up top here, and we'll work through migrating each of these templates and the body over to our new structure. And so I'll put all those new files down here at the bottom. And the left here is the project structure that we just created. I've opened up our routes.js file, which is located in the both folder underneath the router subfolder. The reason this file is in the both folder is that it runs on both the client and on the server. So inside that file, down at the bottom here, you can see up top there's something called router.configure, and we pass that an object of options. This configures the router with various things, like our layout template. At the bottom of that file, we have our map function, and that's where we define our actual routes, like the home route. We'll do that a little bit later. For now, you can see the layout template by default is set to this master layout. Let's go find the master layout and start migrating some HTML over to it. The master layout is the HTML that will show up by default for all of our pages. I've opened up the client folder in our directory tree on the left and looked into the views subfolder. That's where we're going to put most of our HTML related code. Inside that folder, there's another folder called layouts. And for each layout, we'll have a folder and then the corresponding files for that layout. So you can see automatically M created a master layout for us with HTML, JavaScript, and less files. And the reason that it created a less file is because we've added the less package. So instead of using CSS, we'll just use less. Let's open up the HTML file and take a look. You can see the master layout HTML file just contains one template called master layout. Inside the template, there's an expression. This is called an inclusion expression because of this caret symbol here. And what it does is it includes the yield helper. So in short, what this will do is render in a specific template that we specify in our route into this area here. So if we want to put some HTML around that template, we can do it inside of this master layout template. Now up here in the old legacy application, you can see that there's a bunch of HTML in the body. Now when we use router, we don't need to put anything into the body tags anymore because the router will automatically render the correct template in combination with the correct layout into the body. So the first thing we can do is to take this body code and move it into our master layout. So I've cut the above body HTML and I will paste it down below. But now instead of directly rendering out something called a to-dos panel, we'll move the yield expression down here instead. That way we'll let the router decide which template should be rendered into this layout. Now in the browser down in the console, we're getting an error. And the error is that we need to use the caret symbol in front of the login buttons expression. So this is a change from the previous version of the rendering engine for Meteor. Now if we want to include another template, or a component, we need to use this caret or the inclusion expression. So when I save this, you can now see that our layout is getting rendered appropriately, but the router is automatically rendering the not found template because we haven't created any routes yet. Inside the legacy todos.html file, there's a bunch of other templates that we created. A little bit later, we'll be migrating each of those into its own view in our new app. For now, I'd like to create the scaffolding for our to-dos collection and other related files. I've closed the tree so that we get a little bit of a better view, and up top I've opened up our legacy JavaScript file. At the top of that file, you can see where we created the Meteor collection for to-dos, and because it's outside of this if statement with the Meteor is client or is server, it runs in both the client and the server. If I scroll past the template, event handlers, and helpers down to the server block, we had our publish function where we publish all of the to-dos, and then a bunch of security rules for the to-dos collection. So let's create the scaffolding in our new application where we can put all of this functionality. To do that, I've opened up a new tab, and before we go too much further, let's commit our results so that we have a commit log entry for the changes that we just made. So I'll add the new files and then commit with the A and V flag. And now we have a log entry for our changes, so we can roll back if we need to. Okay, next what we want to do is to create the scaffolding for our to-dos collection. So I'll use the M command and then something called the generate subcommand. If I hit enter here, I can get some help, and you can see that one of the subcommands here is called generate, or I can just use G for short. So I'll type M, G, and then colon, and then the resource that I want to generate. In this case, I'm going to generate something called a scaffold, which means a bunch of files that are related to this to-dos resource. And you can see a bunch of log entries here telling us that new files and folders have been created. Let's go back to our editor and take a look. The first thing to note is the scaffolding generator created a new files in the collections folder underneath both. That means that this file will be available on the client and server. And what it does is it creates a new instance of a Meteor collection called to-dos. So we've moved the collection creation from one big JavaScript file into its own file, and that just makes it easier to manage once we have quite a few collections. They'll all mostly be in this collections folder. The next thing to note is our routes.js file, that a new route has been created for us automatically using this.route method. And the name of the route is todos.index. The reason for the period is that it's just easier for me to read the routes this way. Then this particular route has one option called path, which is an option that you'll almost always provide. In this case, it's the root path. So that corresponds to the path that we're on now in the browser. And you can see that something is being rendered here that's different from the not found. And you can see where it's located just by reading this string here. So it looks like we have a new HTML file called todos index that was created for us automatically. So by default, this route will automatically look for a view called todos index because of the name of the route. Let's go find the view. Inside the client folder, if we navigate down to the views folder, you can see now there's a new subfolder called todos, and that's where we can put our todos views. A to-do view was created for us automatically called todos index, and you can think of this view as where we can put our lists. We can delete it if we don't need it, but in this case we'll actually end up using it in the next video. And the todos index view has an HTML file which contains its template, and you can see this is what's being rendered over on the right in the browser right now. And the todos index view also has a JavaScript file where we can put event handlers and helpers, and even lifecycle hooks for the template. And finally, a less file where we can put styles related to the view. We'll be working more with views and routes in the next video. But before we conclude this video, let's jump down to the server folder. You can see a todos.js file has been created in the server as well. And the reason is because this is where all of our security rules will go. Since the allow and deny rules are only supposed to be run on the server, that's where we'll put them. And so before we finish, let's jump up and migrate over our allow and deny rules. And I'll just copy these and paste them down below. Finally, over on the left in the server folder, I want to navigate into the publish folder, and you can see a folder for to-dos has been created there as well. And we get a default publish function for our to-dos index. And again, you can think of to-dos index as just our list view. Currently, this publish function doesn't do much, it just sends the ready message. So if I go back to our legacy application and I search for publish, you can see that the only publish function we have currently is one that just searches for all of the to-dos and returns a cursor for them, for the particular user who's logged in. So what I'll do is I'll just copy that and return it here. And that will be our default index publish function for our to-dos collection. All right, let's conclude by checking in our code. So I'll add our new files, and then I'll commit with the -A and V to include everything. And in this video, what we did was we looked at creating scaffolding for to-dos, and we also initialized our project structure for the application. And so we should be ready to go to start creating new views for our to-dos collection.